Welcome to Chalk and Code,
where the science of learning meets modern technology.
We're bringing together entrepreneurs, product leaders, researchers, and advocates
to spark ideas, challenge assumptions, and shape the future of learning. Welcome to Chalk and Code, where we explore new and novel directions in education, technology, and leadership. Today's guest is Dr. Joseph Atman, founder and CEO of MiddleTree. MiddleTree is a California-based 501c3 nonprofit that provides K-12 and adult learners with personalized, affordable supplemental education with drop-in academic support, one-on-one tutoring, dyslexia services, and career training. MiddleTree has recently added allied health program, if I've got that right. MiddleTree is reshaping how learners access and experience learning outside the traditional school model. Dr. Atman holds undergrad and master's degrees in interdisciplinary studies from Hofstra University, was a fellow at Claremont Graduate University, and earned a doctorate in sacred theology from St. Mary's Seminary in Houston, Texas. A philosopher by training, he's authored books and essays exploring consciousness, moral agency, and educational freedom. And since founding MiddleTree, he has led its expansion across California while maintaining its nonprofit mission and its novel approach to personalized, affordable learning. He joins us today to discuss MiddleTree's novel approach to supplemental education, college prep, and adult learning, the challenges of scaling human-centered learning, and what it means to design education around autonomy, equity, and purpose. Dr. Atman, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, given your background, tell us about your personal journey, most especially how your interests in theology and consciousness collide, and how that affects how you think about learning.
Yeah. So my background is, as you described very eloquently there, it was exclusively kind of going on the academic path there for a long time. As I always say, I have no business background. I had never planned on starting a nonprofit, as I had been in school for such a long time, and thought, I was just going to be in a classroom for forever. It's still a huge part of my passion. But just sort of got translated into this mission. And that mission sort of unfolded through my own journey of, I always say I wish that I could tell you that I had this great idea to sort of solve all these difficulties that we have within education. That really wasn't the case at first. Really, at first it was just that I basically was looking to get a tenure track position somewhere when I was, ready to submit my dissertation and move into that role as that professor, and get on that track. And while I sort of waited for that to all unfold, it was happening more slowly than, I had wanted and figured. And so I thought, well, in the meantime, I could do something that was impactful. I could do something that I had a background in, and bring the classroom sort of to me rather than wait for, that tenure track gig to come calling. So I had some experience with consulting for a nonprofit, with doing some work with nonprofits, and basically I kind of gathered a couple of folks who were familiar with that work that I had done with some of these nonprofits initially, and started talking to them about an idea that I had. I really had this idea when I was kind of looking at my work and looking at my station in life and thinking, gosh, what would I do if I didn't get in the classroom right away? And I thought, well, I could do something academically. As you mentioned, I had a background sort of in consciousness studies, and I thought, well, how do we shape our consciousness? Well, generally we do that through education, at least initially. And what do I know about that? What's my own experience? I've been in the educational realm as a student for so long. And I thought, well, I could do something impactful within the educational space, taking, the limited experience I'd had with nonprofits at that point, and do something that was really kind of closely akin to again, not only my experience, but continuing to evolve my own passion and ideas around just education in general. And so the original notion that I had for Middletree was quite a bit different than it is today. I thought, well, I could just have a summer program for students that gave them some sort of academic support, and we could do cool stuff, in very much that kind of summer camp kind of vein, and just make sure that anyone could have access to it regardless of their capacity to pay. That was quite simply the initial idea. Just give people an opportunity to have the academic support regardless of their financial standing, because so many people just can't afford that kind of help. In Claremont, where we're at, in our headquartered office here in Southern California, it's just outside of Los Angeles, lots of at risk, at need communities down here. And so I thought, well, maybe we could reach into those communities, into those school districts, and form some sort of partnership with folks at need. And that's what we did initially in that summer. And that summer was successful enough to get us our enough revenue to put a little deposit on a very, very small office at first. This is over a decade ago, and things kind of evolved from there. Really, what happened was, in that first office space, I didn't have many students, and the very few students that I had, they of course needed help, and we operated on a very traditional model where people came in at a set appointment time, had an hour session, and then they left. That's the traditional model. But because I had so few students, one of them in particular needed some extra help, and she asked me if she could just stay a little bit longer. And I said, well, no one's coming in after you, so sure, why not? So that happened for a number of weeks, and wouldn't you know it, we'd worked more and more together, and wouldn't you know it, she really started to improve. And I thought, well, there's something to this. Maybe if I just let her come whenever she wanted and built it around her schedule, I'm here, right? Maybe there's something to that. So that's what kind of spawned the idea for me to allow students to come whenever they wanted to. And that's kind of the basis of what we do at our centers. We allow students to come whenever they want to, stay for as long as they need to, study whatever they have to while they're with us. And what we found is that not only are students, are they going to excel in a greater capacity than they would in these very confound sessions, but it takes a lot of pressure off of everybody, of them, of us. And then what it also does is it really allows for students to understand that, hey, this is up to me. The effort that I put in, is going to reflect in what I get out of this. So I always describe Middletree's unlimited program like a gym model. You join a gym membership. If you want to get out of there looking like Arnold Schwarzenegger, you just put in that time and effort. And it's the same thing with us. So that's the unique thing about what we're doing, outside of then, of course, allowing anybody still who needs access, even regardless of their capacity financially. We don't deny anyone due to finances. And then the other thing that we do, that third thing that we do that's quite unique, is we personalize every student's academic path. So every student gets a plan, a personalized plan with us, and we're going to follow that plan to fidelity. So between the personalization, the access, regardless of their financial capacity, and that unlimited nature of the program, we're doing things quite a bit differently. It's very much the opposite of what the traditional school system does.
Let's
What we're doing.
explore that. Let's explore that particular aspect of what you're doing a little bit more deeply. I would, if you don't mind, I'm going to ask you to respond to something that in your book that kind of leapt out at me. It seems like and one of the things that I'm interested in is how much your early experiences shaped what you've written and how you think about education now versus how much of what you were trained in affected how you're approaching middle tree. Which came first. And as I was reading your book with this critique of abstract, what I interpret as abstract learning kind of jumped out at me. I'll read it for anybody who's interested. All our modern education focuses on how things happen within the phenomenological field, but it seldom asks the students to participate in the business of solving the problems created by the very kind of thinking it advocates. And that sounded like a critique of, say, the education system with a capital E, the way it's currently structured. And I wondered, given that it was written, probably 2018, 2019, it was published. Did your experience, those early experiences that you just described, shape how you came to think about it?
Absolutely. As you correctly pointed out, I was, kind of in the academic field previously, and as I just talked about, right? And then through our work, we really kind of discovered a lot of things about that capital E education system. A lot of things that I take umbrage with, and I have a whole diatribe that I go down. I get on a very, very tall soapbox about all of this and about the education system, which I think is fundamentally, although flawed, trying to do good things, of course. And I think that little kind of section that you just read is talking about the fact that we harp on abstractions. We harp on what I call in the book, the conceptualization. We really want to be very intimately familiar with abstract concepts and ideas. And yet that's only a part of it, our experience as conscious individuals. The other part deals with what I've called just the reality of the situation. Any thought, any idea that we have is an abstraction. It's a degree removed from what is, because it saturates through the filters of our own consciousness. And in a classroom setting, that's frequently all we're really focused on, our concepts and ideas and abstractions. And it's no wonder that students don't necessarily always register with the reality and the truth of what teachers are trying to expound. And of course, there are so many different reasons why, the lessons and what we do in the educational system here in this country anyways, don't always register with students. By and large, I think it's safe to say that most students don't get everything that they could out of their educational experience. And I think a big reason for that is because we harp so heavily on abstract concepts and on things that just don't seem real to us as students, or to our students. Because they're not brought to life in ways, this is how we think as human beings. Really, we are great abstract thinkers. We are great conceptualists, and because almost every thought that we have is filtered by a bias, by a preconception that we have, by an idea, by a notion, by fill in the blank. When what I talk about frequently in the book is, we need to try and get rid of all of those things in order to see or experience what actually is. Any idea that you have about anyone or anything is going to be colored by all of the ideas, all the beliefs, all the notions, all the conceptions that you have about not just that thing, but about everything else. So how do you rid and kind of clear away all of those other abstractions, all of those concepts to have a true and real interaction with what is.
So how does that work itself out at Middle Tree specifically?
Well, again, we're trying to allow students the time to find themselves. I think that education's most important job actually is to allow a person to discover not only who they are, but what their relationship is to the world at large, and what their relationship is will help determine what place that individual can carve for themselves within the world. I think it's something that education fails at fantastically in the way that we've set this all up, given that, we have one teacher in front of 20, 30 students at least, and we're all going to learn the same lesson. We're all going to learn it the same way. Because we don't have time. Teachers, as I always say, are probably the biggest victims of this whole system that we have. So this is not a critique of teachers whatsoever. Teachers, almost to a person, are well-intended, good-hearted individuals with great purpose, and I mean, intelligent wonder. I mean, I think you have to be of a good nature and want to do a lot of good in the world to be a teacher. So this is not a criticism of them, but the way that we've set all this up does no favors to either our teachers or our students in many different capacities. So how we're trying to do this at Middle Tree is we're sort of trying to work with the system that we've set up while offering a different pathway within it. And that different pathway has everything to do with the three things that I described, making sure that you have whatever time that you need to saturate with information. You go and, you learn how to ride a bike, which is the oldest and most cliche example, right? Not everybody learns how to ride the bike, within a day or within a week, and not everybody rides the same bike in the same terrain, in the same kind of weather. With the same teachers, or we're not on equal footing in any experience that we have, and so we at Middle Tree really try and acknowledge that and recognize that everybody needs whatever time they might need in order to saturate with information, with the material that especially our education system is disseminating to students. So, and that's again what school districts can't do, the way they've set everything up. School starts on a certain day of the year, it ends on a certain day of the year. There's tests on Tuesdays that you got to be prepared for, and on Wednesday we're moving on. So it's all a time frame, which, if you think about it, that's not how our brains that's not how our brains work. We don't say, okay, brain, I've got to learn this between now and Thursday. Like that's just not how it happens. Riding that bike doesn't happen on a particularly set time schedule. Nothing does that we encounter in life, so far as our capacity to really master that thing. So just by allowing students whatever time they need, we're really trying to get around that problem of making things abstract, dealing with things in abstract ways for students that they can utilize only for a time and then totally disregard what it was that they learned. I frequently say that I can tell you that our education system is not doing its job, because I can ask the average person on the street, who was the third president of the United States? What's terminal velocity? What does a cell membrane do? These are basic principles within very elementary academic subjects. This is like, are you smarter than a fifth grader stuff? And the reason we don't know these things is because within our education system, we've set up a process by which people can just interact with information and then just disregard it, because it has no value outside of that initial interaction that we have with it within a classroom. So this abstract idea remains an abstract conception, and that has no reality for the majority of people once they are through with it. So we're trying to get students to understand what their own passions are by allowing them time to saturate with the material, given that unlimited capacity that we have, and then we personalize that program around them and say, gosh, are you interested in this? Let's frame things in those terms, or set things up for you in a way that simply makes sense for you. And we can do that because we have all the time that we need to work with students. So tests might be on Tuesday, but we're open every day working with students all day. So,
okay. So by removing the kind of constraint of the time pressure to move with the defined pace of a particular curriculum, you're opening up what sounds like lots of opportunity for a student to kind of sit with certain materials or ideas long enough to absorb them, for them to incorporate them, perhaps, I may be making a leap here, into the other things that they're learning. It also sounds like you are one-on-one sitting with them to define that learning path. Am I following?
absolutely are. Yeah, you're following exactly. Students come to us. We've got folks, our teachers are floating around the room, and generally what happens is, we'll work with the student for as long as they need, and then teachers bounce around the room to different students. The object is not, and this is something that happens within, again, traditional supplemental academic settings, is a tutor will sit with the student and unintentionally start to feed them answers. That either, right? We want to say, okay, let's work on this together for a while. Let's do it together. And then I'm going to leave you, and I want you to do the next, prompt, or the next 5 problems, or whatever it might be, on your own. And then let's come back. We're trying to teach students to think. We're leading them to the water, but we can't make them think, So,
Given the way you're working, and given your concern about not that particular aspect of being a tutor, you start feeding them answers. Have you got concerns about the current push in edtech for AI, for personalized learning through AI tutors? Does it give you pause?
I think you should give everyone pause, because it's fundamentally changing the ease by which we're able to expound information. That is, we can express things. We can have an intermediary express things for us, and so it can quite obviously, take away the need for students to really critically think about what they're being asked to think about. And it's far too easy to do. So I think it's a great concern. We see its effects every day. It kind of went in a very short time from, students don't really do cursive anymore, for handwriting, to students are not doing handwriting hardly at all anymore. They've forgotten it. But now they're typing, to, well, they don't even type anymore. They're just texting everything, to now they're just putting a lot in AI. Now, this isn't every student, but it's a lot of them. And I think AI should give everyone some pause. It's so new that I don't think that there's not one way of dealing with it. The education system hasn't adopted a approach to it. I think that it is something that, however, is going to be so ubiquitous within the educational model, whatever those models might be in the future, in the not very distant future at that, that it's going to be something that we're going to have to learn to work with and figure out, while still maintaining that humanness, that human-centered experience, so much of which happens because we have to think about things our own and approach problems in the unique ways and perspectives that we're afforded by our own unique individualities and experiences. And that's something that AI can take away really quickly. So I don't know that I have a lot of answers to that, other than hopefully, I mean, the AI is a great tool. I mean, it's a fantastic tool. But we have to keep it as a tool and not at the heart and crux of how we express ourselves.
Right. I was kind of, again, I was perusing your book and I'd gotten down to this passage kind of later in the book where you write that humanity has made the same continuous blunder since its inception. We are tempted to pass over experience in exchange for an attempt at instant enlightenment, however unearned it might be. We wish for wisdom without the work. And I wondered when I read it, was Dr. Atman thinking about current, work in edtech to develop AI tutors that can replace the human element. One of the last guests to whom I spoke had been a head of schools, and he repeatedly emphasized the relational aspect of education and how that was crucial to bringing students along and kind of in fostering within them a love of learning, a curiosity, and a willingness to put in work when the work was hard.
Yeah. When I wrote that, and I had no idea about AI. I think the vast majority of people, I mean, the ChatGPT, I believe, came out just over 2 years ago. It was publicly available. I had no conception of artificial intelligence or how that, outside of sci-fi, right, or how that might impact us on a daily life or on a daily level within our daily life. But the wisdom without the work thing, and so this is the precise difficulty that humanity, because we have this great and profound capacity for abstract thought. Abstract thought, the sort of devil within the details there is that abstract thought provides you direct access to further abstractions, which can get you close to realities, can get you close to ideas about things, but don't provide the full experience. What I mean by that is, I also talk about the most famous sort of story that folks in the West are familiar with. Is the story? It's the biblical story of Genesis, particularly the Garden of Eden story, and in that story, Adam and Eve gain instant knowledge. They eat from the tree, they gain instant knowledge. So they have all of this knowledge, and yet they're immediately removed from their relationship with God. They're immediately removed from the natural environment that they had been in lockstep with up to that point. And so whether or not you believe that story to be evangelically true or something that is simply a metaphor, it's a really, really powerful metaphor in this context, because it precisely articulates what I'm trying to get across here in that particular project, in A Philosophical War, and the book that you're referencing, is that humanity frequently always wants to have knowledge of a thing abstractly and through conceptualization. However, that is not true and actual knowledge. And just like AI doesn't give you a true and actual response, just like our education system doesn't give you true and actual knowledge. Of course, we've built a whole system and a whole consciousness therein based off of this approach that we take as human beings to our own minds, our own consciousness, is that it's full of abstract ideas about things that are not meshed up or in true alignment with the reality of a particular thing. And that's where the real danger is. And going back to that original story, this is where why that ultimate power did not want Adam and Eve having that knowledge right away. They got wisdom without the work, and it turned out to be literally fatal for humanity.
So Middle Tree is pushing in and helping kids do the work and not just understand it conceptually, but experientially. Okay. So how does given the scope of our conversation so far and how you've described some of the challenges with education with a capital E in the system that we've built and the way Middle Tree is working to address some of that, how do you come alongside existing school systems and supplement them? Or perhaps it's even in some ways an alternative.
It is in a way. Yeah. So we have two different modes of operation at Middle Tree. We have our center programs, which are the programs that I've just been describing to you, in that students come directly to one of our centers and we work with them in the capacity we've just been talking about here. That they come whenever they want to, stay as long as they need to, study whatever they have to. It's like that gym membership kind of model. But we also work directly with school districts, and we work with them in a variety of different ways, from after school care to tutoring within the school day or after or before. And so we're a support to the system. Again, I think everyone is within education, from the superintendent to the preschooler. We're all everybody's involved in the same system, but it's the system itself that is really the problem. The way we've set up education is the issue. And that education in and of itself is a system, is the issue. And what I mean by that is there's only one reason that systems exist in the first place, and that is to obtain a result. Systems are wonderful for building bridges. They're great for baking cakes. They're great for navigating from here to downtown. I wouldn't want to drive anywhere without a really well-developed road system. I'm a terrible cook. I wouldn't want to try and bake a cake without a recipe. Systems are great for that stuff. Amazing. But they're always implemented to obtain a result. Well, what's the problem with that? Well, as I described earlier, when you learn about in history who the third president of the United States was, after you're done with that information and you're moving on to a different class or a different part of your educational experience, you can disregard that information, but you've gotten through that hurdle, but you don't take that stuff with you. And systems are only, in our educational experience here, the system operates like any other. It's trying to obtain a result for our students. And that result that it's trying to obtain is to get the students through the system and have them graduate, have them pass on through from third grade to fourth grade to fifth grade to graduation to college to what? There's nothing after college that is, then you're on your own. Good luck. So the point of our educational system is to shuttle people through it. But this is why we have a high percentage of our high school graduating seniors who are technically illiterate. They've been shut through a system that only cared about the system's efficacy, right? And the efficacy that system demonstrates is through its capacity to shuttle students through it. So it doesn't. So, and here's the kicker: systems don't care about individuals. Systems only care about, and that's what a good system does. You don't need to be a great driver to get from here to downtown. You don't need to be a good baker to bake a cake if you follow the recipe precisely. Good systems allow for good results. That's what they do, regardless of who the user is. But I think we can see in an educational system where we aren't concerned about individuals, why that could be a really big problem. So the education system is not concerned about education. It's concerned about getting students through it. And again, this is not a critique of teachers. This is not a critique of administrators. This is a critique of the way we've set this whole thing up. And
So is there, given, so you've described um, assisting students who were either struggling academically, struggling with a particular concept, but not say academically overall. Kids who really learners generally who need help regardless of their ability to pay for that help. Um, so you've expressed this concern for equity. I've been wondering, as you've described the system now in Middle Tree and how you approach, working with school districts, is there an ideal student? Is there who benefits most from Middle Tree? Is there an exemplar, a story about a particular student that kind of illustrates how Middle Tree comes alongside in both cases and helps move that student forward into that kid's future?
there's no particular student that benefits from Middle Tree more than another. We've got students who struggle with us. We've had literal valedictorians, multiple of them, come through our programs. So there's no particular student who this benefits more than any other. Yeah, and here's the other thing, is that most students who do succeed within our system, and a lot do, right? So I don't want to be, I don't want to make out like I think that no student is successful or our system is not good for a certain contingent of folks. It is. It just given the way that we've set it up, it doesn't do all that it could if it was constructed differently and with a different approach in mind. Just like our own consciousness. Our own consciousness does a lot. We can, through conceptualization, through abstract thought, we can do amazing things. But it's a different manifest. It looks different and unfolds in a different way than if we were to have set it up, or if we do in the future set it up differently. So there's no particular student that benefits more than another. I mean, if you get all the time, all the personal attention that you need, you could be a genius. You could be somebody who, again, academically struggles. It's going to benefit all who take advantage of it. But that's the key. Is again, you and students, frequently in school, students get really frustrated because of the fact that they simply, they really try, and then they get disinterested, and then they stop trying because they keep bringing home D's and F's or whatever the case might be. And so if you were constantly told by the one metric in your life, the school, the education system, what your intelligence level was, that you were not capable, that you were not good enough, that you're not intelligent, you're going to buy into that narrative. And so the person that I can think of most readily, the story is my own, where I had this experience happen to me. And then I see this in so many of our students that, exactly as I just described, you students try for a long time. This is what happened to me when I started kind of in middle school for me. I really, really gave an effort, and brought home D's and F's. And then I was just thought, well, I'm just not very intelligent, I guess. And it wasn't until I found my own passion, and something that I love to do academically that I pursued that. And that's what I wound up getting my graduate degrees. And so we have students every day that are on similar plights and paths. One in particular that comes to mind is, we had a student with us who he was, I mean, this little boy, he was in like 4th or 5th grade at the time with us. He couldn't add, he couldn't do basic arithmetic, but he loved, like the outdoors. He was a Boy Scout and on his way to being an Eagle Scout and all, he loved the outdoors. And so we started framing things for him in language that he was able to understand. I mean, if you build 2 fires and one of those fires goes out, right? So, and when you have all the time that you need to work with students, you can start to set things up like that for them. And again, you can see that this is not something that teachers, given the system that we have, are capable of doing. Because teachers are so under-resourced. Superintendents are so under-resourced. And I'm not just talking about money. I mean, school districts have a ton of money to spend on various programs, but they have to think about things. They have to do things with a different approach in order to get the most out of all this vast potential that lies within their students. And so they've got to start thinking a little bit more creatively. And I'm not here to stand in criticism of districts per se. And again, we work very closely with districts. And we don't try and enforce our center programs on them. We are a servant and a vendor to what school districts want for us to do, and we are more than happy to do all that. But if more students were able to be a part of the kind of processes and programs that we implement at our centers at Middle Tree, I think that would be of benefit to every make and mode of student out there.
Given, I've been listening to you describe how much one-on-one or personalized learning is being delivered human to human, and I've heard you describe and emphasize the human-centeredness and the difficulty that teachers in the existing system have reaching so many kids. And I've found myself wondering what part technology plays at Middle Tree in helping bridge that gap, or if it does.
Yeah, we currently are, just like everyone else, grappling with how to integrate, right? All these absurdly rapid advances in technology over the last 2+ years, and that we're speaking mostly about AI right now. We've had some ideas that are a bit proprietary at the moment, to let's just say integrating our tutors with ready at hand AI capacities, right? So kind of connecting our staff to the AI, so there's a mode by which our tutors can operate as human beings, which is, I think, of paramount importance to continue to do, but also be readily plugged in to an AI assistant and have that capacity. There's some really cool things happening within the edtech world, as you've already kind of alluded to, where you can set up or program some AI assistants to not necessarily give away answers like you would with ChatGPT. You ask it a question, it gives you the answer. There are some AI assistants out there that will sort of walk you through problems in a way that good tutors should do. The problem, however, is that there is no substitute. As long as you're a human being is the catalyst for needing to obtain the information. A human being, in order to fully saturate with that information, a human being giving a human experience needs to be at least an intermediary between the information and the dissemination, or that person who that information is being disseminated to. So a human being requires a human experience, and we want to make sure that that's going to be central to what we do. Not only we have done it over the last decade plus, but into the decades to come for us at Middle Tree.
Do you think that'll be a challenge to scaling the business?
Every challenge is a challenge to scaling the business. So I don't see that as anything that necessarily worries me per se, um, uh, any more than anything else, right? And at some point, at some point there's going to be a standard by which everyone this is how we work with the tech. I'm sure of that, because somebody's going to find something that really works for students, or districts are going to adopt something and everybody's going to latch on to that. Again, it's so new, that people are trying to still reconcile it. So I don't know. I don't know what this looks like in the future. If I had to guess, I think it would be something to what I just described, or something akin to what I just described, is where you've got people who are plugged into the tech, or human beings that are plugged into the tech, that are, again, kind of themselves intermediaries between students and technology.
Okay, fascinating. All right. I've got really two questions for you as we close. The first is, as a founder, I'm sure you have to deal with lots and lots of information coming at you all day long. And I wondered, how do you personally determine what is signal and what's just noise?
In what regard?
Well, if you have to concern yourself with the business, the operations of the business, or changes on the edtech landscape, or things like that, how do you decide what to pay attention to?
That is a great question. That, uh, I, for um, a long time, in running the day-to-day operations of the business, I just kind of scuttled about, chasing one thing after whatever came my way. I was for a while there, not only our prime operator, but our only operator, from an administrative standpoint. And this is at a time where we had 150 staff, teachers on the ground doing work with folks. And I was doing everything from the advertising to talking to, potential partners and parents and students and blah, blah, blah. So, so for a long time, until I had a really great team, and we've got a fantastic team set up, nowadays. For a long time, there was no distinguishment, right, between all of that. But I think you ask a great question. Now, my current title is the founder and CEO, where it was, for this past decade, the executive director. So my current role, is much more focused on getting this sort of information out, to outlets, like yours, and others, and kind of talking about what MiddleTree's mission is, what our purpose is, why we do what we do, and so that's my focus now. I'm not so inundated with day to day, like I used to be, because we've got this, again, fantastic team that still will report up, to me, and I know about what's going on the ground, but I am able to kind of focus now a little bit more on our mission, and that's a pretty new thing for me to be able to do, and it's really nice. But distinguishing that, the noise between, the fodder, from what it is that I should be focusing on, is a really difficult thing to do, and it's really hard, especially when you're starting up any business, I think, and you're the only person who's running it and doing it, and are responsible. You kind of have to chase every lead, and follow every path, to its conclusion, and then backtrack, and go out and follow others. So it's all about getting the right people in place, and making sure that, you all work together, and that we all understand what we're working for.
Okay. And my last question for you is one I ask everyone, and that's, what should we be thinking about in relation to education and technology that we aren't?
Yeah. Um, well, I think that this is something that we are really thinking about, is how do we make sure that we keep that humanness, at the center of our experience. Um, Something that maybe we aren't really thinking about right now is how important is it, uh, to be able to evolve with the technology? Like, how much do we want? How much are we willing to let go? What's the consequences of that? And what I mean by that is, like I kind of described earlier, all right, we're like not going to do cursive anymore. Cursive is that's a dead art. Fine. We're okay with letting that go. Or in some districts. Well, typing, we don't need to type anymore. We can just, but at what point do we say this is essential? This is what makes us human. And so maybe we need to think about what is it that makes us human, and is that important to hold on to? Because this is of course where this is going. I mean, it's maybe even more radical than science fiction has imagined, because there's a real, I don't know if I want to say danger, but there's a real possibility that what a human being is in 50, 100 years from now is unrecognizable to what we are now. So I think that's what we need to think about. And maybe that's what no one is thinking about, is what is it to be a human? Is it important to hold on to that? And how can technology further us in that approach? How might it hinder us? And I think if we don't think about those things, we might get swept away in the current and lose that originality. And I'm not saying that that's good or bad necessarily. I don't know. I mean, maybe this is a natural step on the ladder of evolution, right? Maybe this is something that is supposed to happen, or that is a natural in the process. We don't know. We are kind of just being swept along in the current, but at some point we have to decide whether or not we want to swim back to the shores of our originality. So I think that's what we need to start thinking about at some point.
Thank you. That is a great place to end this conversation. Dr. Atman, thank you for spending time with us. If our listeners wanted to connect with you or MiddleTree, how would they do it?
They can visit us on the web at www.middletree.org. I also have my own site at josephatman.com. We're out there. We're available. There's a lot of info on what we're doing, our mission, and why we're doing it, and why we think we're making an impact. So we'd love to tell you about it and have you be a part.
Thank you. And thank you, listeners, for joining us today, where we explored Dr. Atman's journey from philosopher to founder, the principles that undergird MiddleTree's mission, and the novel opportunities for personalized, affordable learning that it offers. We hope today's conversation sparked some new insight or idea that you can pursue. And if it did, please share the podcast episode with a colleague and join us here next time on Chalk and Code.
Thanks for tuning in. If today's conversation sparked new insights or challenged your thinking, we'd love to hear from you.
Visit flexion.us for more information and join us here next time on Chalk and Code.